You're about to hear an IT guy argue that you probably don't need the shiniest cyber badge on the menu. Because here's the problem. I keep seeing UK small businesses being sold certifications like they're magic shields. Spend the money, get the logo, stick it on the website, job done. Meanwhile, the backups are dodgy, nobody's turned on MFA, and Brenda in accounts is still using the same password everywhere.
He's the guy with the plan for your online life. Keeps your data safe, cuts through the strife. Small biz owners, yeah, this is your guide. Cyber threats, beware, no place to hide. The small business cybersecurity guy, guarding your world with a sharp eagle eye. Tips and tricks to keep your systems tight. Stay secure, stay strong in the digital fight.
Welcome back to the Small Business Cybersecurity Guy. I'm Noel Bradford, long-suffering IT bloke, sworn enemy of bullshit, and today we're talking about a new-ish 5-tier cyber standard called SMB 1001, bronze through to diamond. With me, as ever, are the rest of the troublemakers. Graham Falkner, our resident voice of God, who makes even firewalls sound glamorous, and Mauven MacLeod, who's here to translate all this into what you actually do on Monday morning. We're going to decode what SMB 1001 actually is, how it lines up with Cyber Essentials and the NCSC view of the world, and when it's genuinely useful for a UK small business, versus when it's just another bit of cyber theatre. Right, let's get into it.
You're listening to the Small Business Cybersecurity Guy. Join the team for an all-new episode every Monday on your favorite podcast platform.
Does my head in? Yet another bloody badge. We've barely got UK businesses to notice Cyber Essentials, never mind understand it, and now along comes something called SMB 1001. So if you're a small business owner listening to this, you're probably thinking, Noel, mate, hang on one moment. I've already got clients nagging me for Cyber Essentials, insurance forms asking if I've patched Windows since 2012, and now there's another certification I'm supposed to care about? It feels like homework that never ends. And the way it lands in the real world is usually awful. Some sales rep rocks up saying, we'll get you this shiny new certification. It'll solve everything. Sign here. No mention of what actually changes on your laptops, or who's going to explain MFA to Karen on reception. Just more acronyms and another certificate for the website footer. So if you're rolling your eyes at SMB 1001, fair, totally reasonable reaction.
Picture, if you will, a quite ordinary firm in, say, Manchester. 20-odd staff, mixture of office and remote, spreadsheets flying about, a CRM they only half understand. Business is ticking along, and then in the space of 6 months, 3 different people turn up with security demands. A big new client sends a 12-page questionnaire asking about firewalls, MFA, incident response plans. The cyber insurer wants to know if they patch within 14 days and whether backups are encrypted. And the public sector tender they rather fancy says, must have Cyber Essentials Plus. Our poor managing director looks at all of this and thinks, I sell widgets, not firewalls. Why is everyone suddenly speaking in hieroglyphics? So they ring the IT company and say those immortal words. Can you just make us secure? And the IT company, bless them, now has to translate all these frameworks, checkboxes and standards into something that doesn't melt the budget or cause a staff revolt.
Yep, and in the background, the threats are very real. In the UK, roughly 4 in 10 businesses report a cyber breach or attack in a year, mostly phishing emails. Ransomware's still a thing, invoice fraud's still a thing, and the average serious incident runs into the low thousands of pounds. Not the end of the world, but enough to ruin your week and knock a wee business off course.
So, where did this mysterious SMB 1001 creature come from? It wasn't dreamt up in a Whitehall basement, that much we can say. It began with a private standards outfit called Dynamic Standards International, DSI, based in Washington, with an office in Canberra. Their roots are largely Australian. It grew out of earlier work trying to make security guidance less terrifying for small businesses over there. They looked at things like Australia's Essential 8, saw that it was quite technical and not exactly friendly to, say, a 10-person plumbing firm, and said, what if we built a ladder, a journey? Start at very basic hygiene, climb up to almost ISO 27001 level maturity, but in stages. That became SMB 1001, launched around 2023, updated every year, hence the current SMB 1001 2026 edition. The dynamic bit means the standard is refreshed annually. New threats, new controls, you recertify each year. More like an annual service than a one-off MOT. Certification is handled by another private company called CyberCert. You go onto their platform, pay an annual fee, do a self-assessment for the lower tiers, and for the top 2 tiers, they send in auditors. It's now being marketed in places like Australia, the US, New Zealand, Canada, and yes, the UK.
And here's the bit I really want UK listeners to clock. There is no NCSC logo on this thing. No UK regulator backing it. It's not in any government procurement note, it's not mentioned in NCSC guidance, and it certainly doesn't replace Cyber Essentials for public sector contracts. This is a private standard from a private body now being pushed into the UK market. That doesn't make it bad, by the way. Plenty of useful stuff in private standards. But I get twitchy when people start talking about it like it's the new Cyber Essentials or some magic key for insurance. In the UK context today, it isn't. If you want to sell to central government, you still need Cyber Essentials or Cyber Essentials Plus. End of.
So if you're running a UK SME, what does that actually mean? First, treat SMB 1001 as optional, not mandatory. It can be a handy framework, especially if you trade internationally, because it's pitched as globally applicable. But it doesn't give you a UK procurement passport. No one in a ministry is saying, show us SMB 1001 instead of Cyber Essentials. Second, it's not an official insurance shortcut here. CyberCert talk about insurer recognised. And maybe that's true in some markets, but we've not seen big UK insurers saying, have SMB 1001 and get cheaper premiums. By contrast, Cyber Essentials is clearly linked to some UK cyber insurance deals. So we'll talk about SMB 1001 on its merits. Is the ladder sensible? Are the controls practical? Could it help you have a better conversation with your IT provider? But keep that lens on. Helpful ideas. No official UK stamp. Let's lay out the shape of this thing before we dive into details. SMB 1001 chops security into 5 buckets. First, technology management. That's your firewalls, antivirus, updates, the nuts and bolts IT stuff. Second, access management. Who can get into what? User accounts, passwords, multi-factor authentication. Third, backup and recovery. If somebody encrypts your files or you delete the wrong thing on a Friday, can you get your data back without tears? Fourth, policies, processes, plans. The boring sounding documents that decide what you do when things go sideways. And fifth, education and training. Teaching staff not to click on rubbish or shove client data into random AI tools.
Then we have the 5 tiers, like a little cyber belt system. Bronze at the bottom. This is basic hygiene. Have you got firewalls? Are you patching? Do you back up anything at all? Silver adds more structure around people and email, individual accounts, MFA on email, some anti-fraud measures. Gold is when it begins to feel quite grown up. You introduce smarter endpoint tools, proper email authentication like DKIM and DMARC, a written incident response plan, formal staff training, the works. Platinum then says, alright, don't just tell us you've done it, let us check. You get external audit and regular vulnerability scanning of internet-facing systems. Diamond at the top is the full fat maturity level, penetration testing, rehearsed incident drills, supplier due diligence programs, application control. It's the closest they get in spirit to ISO 27001, without claiming to be equivalent.
And this is where I'm going to save a few of you some stress. You do not have to climb to diamond. For a lot of UK small and mid-sized firms, bronze, silver, and maybe gold is plenty. Platinum and Diamond are more, we're in an international supply chain and people keep saying ISO 27001, but we're not ready for that pain yet. If you're a 10-person accountancy in Leeds or a 30-person marketing agency in Bristol, don't let anyone guilt trip you into Diamond unless your clients genuinely demand that level. Treat the top tiers as nice to know they exist, not some moral obligation. Focus on what knocks out most of the realistic threats you actually face.
Want the deep dive? Check the sources. All the details, guides, and courses. Hit the blog for scripts and more. The Small Business Cybersecurity Guide.co.uk. The blog. Real security. No fluff.
Right, Bronze, this is tier 1, and I'm going to be blunt. If your IT company can't get you to Bronze, you need a new IT company. The controls are standard hygiene. First, you've actually got proper tech support, usually a managed service provider or at least a competent IT contractor, not my cousin's good with iPhones. Then firewalls, one at the edge of your network, the little box between you and the internet, and software firewalls turned on for each device. Default passwords are changed. You're not still using admin from the factory sticker. Every laptop and PC has antivirus or endpoint protection installed, set to update itself automatically. Your machines are configured for automatic security updates, not we'll patch it when Dave remembers. And you've got daily backups, encrypted, stored off-site, typically in the cloud, not a USB drive permanently plugged into the server, labelled backup in Biro.
In practice, for a 5 to 50 person firm with an MSP, most of this should already be in place. Your provider will usually bundle endpoint protection, patching, and backups into a monthly package. Bronze is essentially about checking they're doing what they say they're doing, and tidying up any gaps, like the odd old PC that's fallen off updates, or someone using their admin account for day-to-day work. From your side as a business owner, Bronze shouldn't feel dramatic. You might see more prompts for updates being installed. You might be told, we're turning on the firewall on every laptop. But it's not a huge culture shock. If it is, that tells you how far behind you are.
2 important wrinkles at Bronze. 1, it talks about routine password changes, at least annual. That clashes with NCSC and Cyber Essentials guidance, which explicitly say, don't force regular password resets. Go for long passphrases and multi-factor instead. So if your IT company waves SMB 1001 at you and says, everyone must change passwords every X weeks, push back and ask them to reconcile that with NCSC guidance. Second, director self-attestation. For Bronze, Silver and Gold, there's no external auditor. A company director has to log into the CyberCert portal and personally attest that all the controls are in place. That's deliberate. It drags responsibility into the boardroom or the cafe table if that's your boardroom. Done well, it's great. The director actually reads what they're signing and understands the risks. Done badly, it's just another box ticked by someone who shrugs and goes, yeah, IT have got it. And if that's you, you're signing your name to something you don't really understand, which is not a great legal or moral position to be in.
Silver takes the Bronze basics and tightens things mainly around people and email. First big change. Everyone gets their own user account. No more info@ mailbox used by half the office as a login to everything. No shared credentials on systems. Each person has a unique username and password, and crucially, they're not using admin accounts for day-to-day work. You also bring in a password manager, a proper password vault for staff, so they can use long, unique passwords without having to remember them all. On top of that, multi-factor authentication gets switched on for email, so if someone steals a password, they still can't stroll into your mailbox without that extra code or app approval. Silver also expects your public-facing website to use TLS, that's the padlock in the browser, and it adds SPF to your domain's DNS. SPF is basically a list that says, only these services are allowed to send email as us, which helps cut down on spoofing. Then there's the people process bits. Confidentiality agreements for staff before they start, a documented policy to stop invoice fraud, and a visitor register so you know who's been in restricted areas. All very unsexy, but surprisingly effective.
Let me put a human face on that invoice fraud piece. Imagine your accounts person, let's call her Sarah, gets an email that looks exactly like it's from a long-standing supplier. Same logo, similar tone. Hi Sarah, we've updated our banking details. Please pay this month's invoice to the new account shown attached. She's busy. It's nearly 5. The email thread below looks legitimate, so she updates the record and pays. Only of course, it wasn't the supplier. It was a criminal who'd managed to either spoof the supplier's address or get into someone's mailbox. The money's gone. The supplier still expects payment. Now you have an awkward conversation and a hole in your cash flow. Silver's mix of SPF, MFA on email, and a simple policy like any change of bank details must be verified by a phone call to a known number directly targets that scenario.
From a cost and culture point of view, Silver is where staff start to notice change. Password Manager means learning a new tool. MFA on email means codes on phones. Unique accounts and no shared logins means you can't just shout, "What's the password for X?" across the office. Implementation-wise, a decent MSP should be able to do a Silver uplift in a few weeks. Roll out the Password Manager, turn on MFA, configure SPF and TLS, help you draft those basic policies. You might be looking at a bit of project cost on top of licenses, but nothing wild for a typical SME. The bigger lift is habit. People not trying to bypass MFA, not writing the master password on a sticky note, actually following the invoice check procedure. That's where you, as leadership, need to back the changes. Not roll your eyes and say, "Do we really need this?" Gold is where it stops feeling like just IT plumbing and starts looking like we take this seriously. Technically, you add EDR, endpoint detection and response, on your devices. Think of it as antivirus with a brain. It watches behavior, can spot suspicious activity, and often has a 24/7 service behind it to respond. MFA gets pushed out everywhere, not just email, but your key business apps and even social media accounts. Remote desktop, if you use it, should only be accessible via VPN, not hanging straight off the internet. And your email security gets upgraded with DKIM and DMARC. DKIM adds a digital signature to your outbound email saying, "Yes, this really came from our system." DMARC is a policy in DNS telling other mail servers what to do if something fails SPF or DKIM. Quarantine it or reject it. And you're expected to set that to quarantine or reject, not the soft none.
On the governance side, gold piles in a fair bit. You need a written cybersecurity policy. Who's responsible for what, what's in scope, that sort of thing. You need a proper incident response plan. When something goes wrong, who do we call? How do we decide whether to pay a ransom? When do we talk to insurers or the police? There's a digital asset register, a list of systems and data, where they live, who's got access. You put in place secure document destruction, so sensitive stuff doesn't just go in the recycling bin. Staff get regular cyber awareness training, not a one-off lecture. And there's a responsible AI use policy, basically rules to stop people pasting client data into random chatbots and oversharing.
If we compare the feel of gold to UK Cyber Essentials, they're in a similar ballpark on the technical side. Firewalls, patching, malware protection, user access, those themes align. But Cyber Essentials is laser focused on 5 technical controls with very prescriptive rules, whereas SMB 1001 Gold adds more around governance, training and email authentication, SPF, DKIM, DMARC, which CE doesn't go into in that depth. There is a big philosophical clash though on passwords. Cyber Essentials follows NCSC and says, don't force regular password expiry. Focus on strong passwords and MFA. SMB 1001 at Bronze still talks about routine password changes. So if you're trying to align with both, you need to be careful not to blindly follow the SMB 1001 wording and end up out of step with NCSC best practice. And we should stress again, even at Gold, SMB 1001 does not replace Cyber Essentials in the UK. If a tender says, you must have Cyber Essentials, waving a gold certificate from CyberCert won't cut it. Think of gold as giving you a broader, more narrative story to tell about your security maturity, helpful with some clients, maybe with international partners, but still sitting alongside Cyber Essentials, not instead of it. Now we climb into the rarefied air of Platinum and Diamond. Platinum is where the game changes from "we promise we've done the things" to "someone else has checked." You still do the self-assessment, but CyberCert or their auditors come in and verify. There's external scrutiny rather than pure trust. Technically, Platinum adds regular vulnerability scanning of any systems you've got exposed to the internet. Automated tools prod your websites, VPN endpoints, whatever's public, looking for known holes so you can patch them before criminals do. Remote access gets tightened. MFA has to be properly enforced on things like VPN and remote desktop. Sensitive data at rest on servers or laptops should be encrypted, so if a device walks off, your data doesn't go with it. There's also a big emphasis on what they call digital trust for suppliers, actually vetting third parties who touch your systems or data, beefing up contractor agreements, and keeping an active cyber insurance policy.
Diamond takes that and turns the dial to 11. You're now doing penetration testing, paying ethical hackers to attack your systems and report what they find. And you're running incident response drills, so you've rehearsed what happens on a bad day. The supplier digital trust program is fully embedded, so you're systematically managing cyber risk across all your key vendors, not just asking them once a year if they're all good. Diamond also expects the most rigorous day-to-day discipline, things like tight application control, where only approved software can run. It's the closest SMB 1001 gets to that ISO 27001 style mindset. But as the docs are very clear, it's not equivalent to ISO. Different beast, similar intent.
So when does any of this make sense for a UK business?
Don't leave your business exposed. Hit subscribe and like the show. Stay informed and protected. Small business cybersecurity guide. Security tips you can trust. Subscribe now. Stay secure.
If you're 10 people doing local bookkeeping, it doesn't. Honestly, Platinum and Diamond are overkill. You're better off nailing Cyber Essentials, maybe SMB 1001 Gold if you like the framework, and spending the rest of your budget on decent backups and staff training. Where Platinum or Diamond start to look sensible is bigger, higher risk outfits. Maybe 50 plus staff, manufacturing with sensitive designs flying back and forth to Australia or the US, or a tech firm embedded in international supply chains where partners are nudging you towards ISO 27001, but you're not there yet. In that world, being able to say, we're at Platinum or Diamond, we've had external audits, we do scans and pen tests, could carry some weight, especially outside the UK. But don't let anyone sell you Platinum or Diamond as a magic shield or a necessary step for every SME. It's a tool for specific scenarios, not default homework for every 5-person firm in Dundee. Let's put this in the context of the UK roadmap you've probably already heard about. The native path here is start with Cyber Essentials, maybe step up to Cyber Essentials Plus, then, if you need more governance and process, but ISO feels too heavy, you look at IASME Cyber Assurance. After that, if big clients demand it and you've got the budget, you go for ISO 27001. In terms of money and time for a typical UK SME, the certification fees themselves are, frankly, seriously cheap compared with most standards. At the time we're recording this, bronze is about £75, silver £153, gold £310, platinum £467, and diamond £780, all ex-VAT. That's per year for the certificate and platform access, not including any work your IT folks have to do. The real cost is the uplift work. Bronze is usually cheap and quick if you already have a half-decent IT setup. Days to a few weeks, maybe up to a couple of grand in tidying up costs on top of that £75. Silver might be a few weeks of work and low thousands to cover licenses, MFA rollout and policies on top of the £153. Gold is a bigger lift, 1 to 3 months and more like several thousand once you add things like EDR and training platforms to that £310 fee. Those are ballparks, but it gives you a sense that this isn't a 10 quid tick box exercise, nor a 6-figure ISO project.
Where it can help is giving you a very concrete roadmap with your MSP. Instead of the usual, can you just make us secure? You can say, right, we're basically bronze now. Let's plan a project to get to silver this quarter and gold next year. It turns into a defined set of controls. Password manager rollout, MFA, SPF, DKIM, DMARC, policy writing, training, all things you can cost and schedule.
In terms of rough money and time for a typical UK SME, bronze is usually cheap and quick if you already have a half-decent IT setup. Days to a few weeks, maybe up to a couple of grand in tidying up costs, plus the relatively small certification fee. Silver might be a few weeks of work and low thousands to cover licenses, MFA rollout and policies. Gold is a bigger lift, 1 to 3 months and more like several thousand, once you add things like EDR and training platforms. Those are ballparks, but it gives you a sense that this isn't a 10 quid tick box exercise, nor a 6-figure ISO project.
So, who in the UK should actually care about SMB 1001? If you're a micro business wanting a very gentle, internationally flavoured entry into structured security, bronze or silver might appeal. If you're a growing SME, perhaps in multiple countries or dealing with overseas partners, gold can be a nice way to show we're not amateurs anymore. We've got policies, MFA, decent email security. If you live entirely in UK supply chains and your customers mostly talk about cyber essentials, and maybe IASME or ISO, then SMB 1001 is optional seasoning. It can help you organise your security programme, but it will not replace cyber essentials on tender documents. The key takeaway, really, is this. SMB 1001 is a ladder you can choose to climb, at your own pace, to structure your journey. But in the UK, it's a complement, not a replacement for cyber essentials.
So if you remember nothing else, don't chase logos for the sake of it. Get Cyber Essentials if you need it for business. Use something like SMB 1001 as a practical checklist if it helps. And make sure whatever you do actually changes how your systems and people work.
Love the podcast, support the blog, grab some merch, help us keep turning out free content. Every week ain't cheap, merch stores open, have a peek, buy some merch and support independent security.
If you found this useful, do the usual podcast housekeeping for us. Follow, rate, leave a review, or share it with that one colleague who always gets dumped with the IT questions. It genuinely helps more small businesses hear this stuff, instead of just the vendor hype.
And if there's a bit of this you want us to unpack, SPF, DMARC, backups, or that incident response plan you keep putting off, give us a shout. We'll dig in on a future episode.
For now, thank you for lending us your ears. Look after your passwords, look after your people, and the rest becomes far less terrifying. We'll be back with more real-world security, and hopefully fewer buzzwords.
Cheers all, thanks for listening. If you've got a topic you want us to tear into, insurance forms, vendor nonsense, whatever, drop us a line and we'll stick it on the list.
Goodbye.
And from me, stay safe out there and try not to leave your cyber strategy in the "we'll sort it next quarter" pile.
Right, before we let you go completely, let's have a quick chat about the boring but necessary legal bits. Don't worry, I'll make this as painless as possible. First up, and this is important, everything we've said today represents our own personal opinions and experiences. These views are ours alone and don't represent any organisation we work for, any employers, advertisers, sponsors, or anyone else who might be connected to the show. When we're giving you advice or sharing our thoughts, that's coming from us as individuals, not speaking on behalf of anyone else. Everything we've talked about today is for general guidance. It's meant to point you in the right direction, but it absolutely shouldn't be treated as professional advice tailored specifically to your business. Your situation is unique. What works brilliantly for a Birmingham bakery might be completely useless for a Manchester marketing agency.
We do our very best to keep everything accurate and current, but let's be honest here. The cybersecurity world moves faster than a caffeinated squirrel being chased up a tree by Mauven's Jack Russell. Things can change between when we record and when you're listening, so always double check critical technical details with qualified professionals before you go making major changes to your systems. If we've mentioned any websites, products or services, we're giving you information, not necessarily giving them our seal of approval. We can't be responsible for what happens on their end or if things go sideways when you use them. Some things we recommend might involve affiliate partnerships. We'll always flag those when they come up because transparency matters. Now, if you're dealing with serious cybersecurity incidents, actual data breaches or gnarly legal compliance issues, please talk to proper professionals rather than just relying on podcast advice. We're here to educate and help you understand the landscape, not to replace your security consultant, solicitor, or IT team. This has been a Small Business Cybersecurity Guy production. Copyright 2025, all rights reserved.
Click subscribe and join the ride. Together we'll shield the digital tide. Your business is strong when your data's secure. The Small Biz Cyber Guy, here to ensure. Thanks for listening, we're signing off. Stay cyber safe no matter the cost. The Small Biz Cyber Guy says goodbye.